Unfortunately, I had to be inside most of it, but it was a beautiful day. And I was noticing when we were traveling back home, of course, the sun was setting. And the sun just looked so big setting. It was kind of crazy, but it was a absolutely beautiful day, even if it does turn dark at like 4 o'clock now. But, you know, it is good to see everybody out. It's good to hear some good news with Susan, and glad that you don't have to have surgery. And it's good to see you back today. Are you feeling better, Miss Debbie? Okay, good. I did not have a chance, unfortunately, to make a PowerPoint for tonight, but we're continuing our study in the book of Daniel, and we're in chapter 11 tonight. There are 12 chapters in this book. We're almost done with it. It is a very just a fantastic book on so many levels. I hope that in these harder chapters that you've gotten something from our study. I hope that you've not been too overwhelmed by it. I do want to encourage you to keep in mind that, understanding things from the book of Daniel, some of the places too, book of Ezekiel especially, and some other places do help us to understand a book like Revelation. So it is important to study it from time to time, to at least have some familiarity with the language. I'm going to remind us real quickly of a couple things before we get into the chapter. And they're just basic things that we've been saying this whole time. The whole point of this book, the main arching theme, is that God is what?
In charge.
Sovereign, in charge. That works, okay? He's king. He's the one who rules. There may be human figures in various spots of authority, but they have no authority. They have no power. If God chooses to wipe them out, they're gone. And the whole point of the early part of the book demonstrates that with Nebuchadnezzar, and in chapter 4 especially. But we have this overarching arc where that God is in control. And everything that's happening is happening, he's present with it. He didn't just spin the world and say, well, let's see where it lands. There's a thought that's called deism, in which God created everything and then he's kind of hands off. Just whatever we do with it, and the results are the results. I don't believe Scripture teaches that at all. As a matter of fact, I try to point out the fact that there are some things that we don't know a lot about, but that are hinted at, like this idea of the spiritual battle behind the scenes, demonstrated by Michael and Gabriel before that. And we're going to see that again probably in chapter 12, more so than in this chapter. But God is in control. That's the main thing. Unfortunately, on the human side, it doesn't always feel that way. Okay, so we're talking about a people that Daniel, represents, and the Israeli people, the Jews, the Judeans, they have been under Babylonian captivity, and then under Persian, and then under the Greeks, and then under the Romans. They won't be a nation to themselves ever again. Okay? So when you're dealing with that, it may be very easy, and probably very easy, to be very discouraged. Like, where's God in the midst of all this? And remember, that's part of what we're seeing here. We have this framework that has been given us all the way back to Daniel chapter 2, that we're dealing with these 4 world empires. The 4th world empire is when God is going to set up his eternal kingdom. And we've been talking about kind of the middle ones. I also want to point out that we got to pay attention to time stamps. We've been moving forward, and now we're going to whiplash backwards again. In this chapter, we're going to go back to the first year of Darius. So we have seen this idea of the Persians and the Medes, and then the Greeks, and then the Greeks taking over, and then the 1 horn and the 4 horns, and you had these 4 generals that split up Greece. And then we got into a discussion of one of those horns. Now we're going to come back into that. We're going to go backwards to go forward again. But we're going to talk about 2. And it's going to be the king of the north and the king of the south. And we're going to be talking about the Ptolemies in the south and the Seleucians in the north. The other 2 don't really, something they don't matter. They don't matter to the people who are suffering that Daniel is interested in. Hopefully you can follow that. And then as we push into chapter 12, which we won't do tonight, we're going to set the stage for the things that are going to happen in Jesus' day. Okay? So just if we keep those markers together, that'll help us. There's a lot of language in here where earlier we were told specifically, hey, that goat is Greece, that goat is That ram is the Persians. We're not going to have as many pieces told to us here because they've already told us those things. So we're going to do our best to make it through this chapter tonight. Again, take what you can as far as the idea of dominion. You're going to see that word come up. Keep in mind the ultimate dominion belongs to God. And a couple other things I want to point out, but as we go through. But overall, that's the main thing we need to see. Okay? Let's go ahead in chapter 11, first few verses here. Also, in the first year of Darius the Mede, so now we've kind of gone backwards again, like I said, time-wise, even I, stood up to confirm and strengthen him. And now I will tell you the truth. Behold, 3 more kings will arise in Persia, and the fourth shall be far richer than them all. By his strength, through his riches, he shall stir up all against the realm of Greece. And then a mighty king shall arise, who shall rule with great dominion, and do according to his will. And when he has arisen, his kingdom shall be broken up and divided towards the 4 winds of heaven, but not among his posterity, nor according to his dominion with which he ruled, for his kingdom shall be uprooted, even for others besides these. Now, it's going to be uprooted ultimately by the Romans. It's not going to be, given to, another Greek who's going to come in. That's what he's talking about. Now, it kind of sets the precursors, kind of like an intro, and now we're going to go into, well, what does that mean? What does that look like? Now we're going to have that battle between the north and the south. I want you to keep in mind, though there's a lot of figurative of this, there was a lot of reality that was underneath it. So the Israelites will be trapped between these warring factions all through what we call the intertestamental period. When the Old Testament closes and the New Testament opens, 300 and some years, they're just caught in this battle between these sides until eventually the Romans come in and take over. So they are right smack in the middle, and they're that ground that they just battle back and forth with. Okay? All right. Verse 5. And the king of the south shall become strong, as well as one of his princes, and he shall gain power over him and have dominion. His dominion shall be a great dominion. And at the end of some years they shall join forces, for the daughter of the king of the south shall go to the king of the north to make an agreement, but she shall not retain the power of her authority, and neither he nor his authority shall stand, but she shall be given up with those who brought her, and with him who begot her, and with him who strengthened her in those times. But from a branch of her roots one shall arise in his place, who shall come with an army, enter the fortress of the king of the north, and deal with them and prevail. Now, who are we talking about? He's about to tell us, okay? So, verse 8. And he shall also carry their gods captive to Egypt. Okay? Now, the Egyptians are not their own country at this point. In this time frame, they're under the house, the Ptolemy house. That is who's in charge, okay? And he shall also carry their gods captive to Egypt with their princes and their precious articles and silver and gold, and he shall continue more years than the king of the north. Also the king of the north shall come to the kingdom of the king of the south, but shall return to his own land. However, his son shall stir up strife and assemble a multitude of great forces, and one shall certainly come and overwhelm and pass through. Then he shall return to his fortress and stir up strife. What does this all mean? They're warring back and forth. Okay, that's the thing. I'm not going to get into a history lesson on the Ptolemies and Seleucids and all that happened through, about 100 and some 50 years back and forth warring through. But remember, the Seleucids are up to the north. The Ptolemies are down towards the south. The Israelites are stuck in the middle. So they keep getting hit between both of them. And so it's good for them to know these things are coming. Okay? Again, we're going to kind of read through this quickly because I don't want to get lost in all the little details and go back and hopefully make sense of it. All right, so verse 10. I'm sorry. Verse 11. And the king of the south shall be moved with rage and go out and fight with him, with the king of the north, who shall muster a great multitude, but the multitude shall be given into the hand of his enemy. When he has taken away the multitude, his heart will be lifted up, He shall be cast down tens of thousands, but he will not prevail. For the king of the north will return and muster in a multitude greater than the former, and shall certainly come at the end of some years with a great army and much equipment. Now this was already kind of talked about before, and we're going to allude to the same guy that I've been talking about, this Antichus Epiphanes guy, who's going to set up camp in Jerusalem. Why does this matter? You think, well, this is a bunch of stuff that doesn't matter to us. Well, directly it doesn't. This is in the first year of Darius. This is in the time of the Medes and the Persians. The Medes haven't even been completely overthrown by the Persians yet. Never mind the Persians to go through all their conquests and be then conquered by Alexander the Great, and then he died, and the four generals and all this. Why does it matter? Because God matters. How do you know you can trust God? If you are Daniel, if you are a member of the house of Judah in captivity, you've been in captivity your whole life, you're a generation born in captivity, how can you trust God?
Well, David, God's never forsaken you. God's
Yeah.
always been there for you.
Yeah, Daniel has the personal experience. So how does he share that with his people?
He proves it. He's proven it.
Okay. If I could tell you, which I cannot, okay, I'm not going to pretend like I could, but if I could accurately predict the future, would that be impressive? Yeah, I mean, we can't even accurately predict the weather 3 days from now, right? I mean, we get a little bit better, it seems, as time goes on, but the truth is we really can't. We can know certain things and be able to realize, yeah, we're going to have some bad storms, but we don't quite know. And then we have everybody at 5 alarm, and all of a sudden, you know, we get rain and there's no 5 alarm, right? How many times have we expected this big snow to roll in and it was nothing, right? We are limited. If someone could accurately predict the affairs of the world, and I know people try to do that, and you see them start to unfold as you're in Bible class, if you want to put it that way, does that not impress you? Are these things not there to encourage his people as he sees through these things that God knows what he's doing? I really think that's the point. I think that's what he's trying to do here. It's not that he's trying to teach a history class. For them, these things hadn't happened yet. It's not trying to brag or show off, but it is to show that God is aware and knowledgeable, and he knows what's happening. When I was a kid, excuse me, I remember being in the back of my dad's Nissan truck. He had a little, one of the little sporty, what they used to call hard body trucks. I don't know if y'all know what I'm talking about, the little Nissan. And we had taken a trip to North Carolina in the wintertime. And of course, I grew up in Florida. I'd never seen snow and never really seen cold either. That was a whole different experience. I thought we were cold, you know, when it was 50 and we put on our jacket. But we went up to the mountains. So we went up Blue Ridge and all that. And well, on our trip, it started snowing. And we're going down the road, and it was snowing so hard that I couldn't see. I mean, I'm sitting there, but I can't see anything in front of me. And here's my dad driving, and it doesn't seem to faze him. I was worried because I can't see until I seen that my dad seemed okay. Now, to a little boy, I didn't know or understand that my dad probably couldn't see any better than I could and just was trying to keep it on the road and do the best he could. But because he looked like he was in control, it helped me to what?
You comforted. You weren't worried.
Yeah. It's the same idea. The more we understand that God is in control, hopefully it's a comfort for us. And for them, it's that. For us, looking backwards, it just adds to the evidence and the volume of who God is. Because he knew these things. Sometimes he names them by the nations by name. He even names rulers by name. In the case of Cyrus, that's in the book of Jeremiah. He writes these things as if he was looking backwards and writing history. And a matter of fact, there have been critics who have said, oh, well, these weren't written in those days. They were written centuries after. And then all of a sudden, boom, we find proof that, no, they're that old. You can't deny it. So there is, it's an amazing piece. Does it tell us exactly in the moment a thing about how we should worship doing this? No. It adds to the volume of who God is. And I think that's valuable for us, remembering who God is and that He's in control. All right, so we have this warring back and forth, south and the north. It is going to affect them because as they roll, who's going to get plundered every time? When the army needs food, whose farms is it going to come from? Yeah, whose towns are going to be raided? Yeah, it's going to be them. So they're very well aware of the cost of these things happening. Okay. Let's see, where did we leave off here? Okay, so we're getting ready. Verse 15. So the king of the north shall come and build a siege mound and take a fortified city, and the forces of the south shall not withstand him. Even his choice troops shall have no strength to resist. But he who comes against him shall do according to his own will, and no one shall stand against him. And here's some interesting language. He shall stand in the glorious land with destruction in his power. Now, if we're talking about the glorious land, what's he referencing? Judah, right? Remember, this is the first year of Darius. Daniel and his people are still in Babylon. Okay, you think Iraq. So he's referencing where it's going to happen. Okay, so this battle is going to happen in that ground, in that area. And he shall also set his face, verse 17, to enter the strength of his whole kingdom and upright ones with him. Thus shall he do, and he shall give him the daughter of women to destroy it, but she shall not stand with him or be for him. There's some trickery right there with the wording, but let's keep reading and come back to that. Verse 18. After this he shall turn his face to the coastlands and shall take many, but a ruler shall bring the reproach against them to an end, and with the reproach removed he shall turn back on him. And then he shall turn his face towards the fortress of his own land, but he shall stumble and fall and not be found. And then he's going to change. So he sets up shop, he runs off the south, then he has this other battle. He tries to go to the coast and defeat that. He kind of gets pushed back. So he's losing ground. Okay, this is the one from the north. Look at what it says here. Verse 20. There shall arise in his place one who imposes taxes on the glorious kingdom. Okay, all these nations have been taxing Israel, or Judah, but currently they're not because Jerusalem had been besieged and taken. But not too far in the future, we already read that back a few chapters, but we're jumping time. Cyrus is going to allow the children of Israel to go back where? Back to Jerusalem to rebuild it. Okay? So once they rebuild it, now there's something for them to come in and tax and put under pressure. So again, now we're moving forward in time, and we're under that Grecian time frame, and we're setting up, I think, in the picture, the time of Antiquitas here. But so he imposes taxes on the glorious kingdom, but within a few days he shall be destroyed, but not in anger or in a battle. And in his place shall arise a vile person to whom they will not give the honor of royalty, but he shall come in peaceably and seize the kingdom by intrigue. With the force of a flood they shall be swept away from before him and be broken, and also the prince of the covenant. All right. There's a lot of little details in here. And I'm not going to pretend like I know all the little details in and out. So I'm going to go back to our main frame. We are talking about time periods within, from Darius to the Roman Empire. We're talking about the ins and outs and battles of the land of Judah throughout that whole time frame. If you don't know who the south and north are, That's okay. I just told you who they are. But if you don't like, well, I don't know if that's true. I want you to pay attention to the imagery. The imagery is battle, battle, push, come back, siege, battle. What's happening in this land? War. Just constant war. Who are paying the price? Everyone. But it's right on top. The wars are good. Battles are going to happen on top of, in other places too, but on top of the Jewish people. That's why this is so important. Because they're going to go through the rough of it. Okay? Who these people are exactly, like I said, I think it's leading up to this vile person being the same vile horn that we saw earlier, which is that Antichus Epiphanes, I believe. The one who sets up Jupiter in the temple, the one who surrounds and fortifies the city with his own army, the one eventually the Maccabees will fight and revolt against and push and all that kind of stuff. And he's going to be set up as a likeness to the things of the Roman Empire. Do you have to get all that? Do you have to believe me on all that? No, I just want you to see all the picture of it. Back and forth warring. Where else? Well, in the book do you see a lot of warring in? Revelation, right? And you will hear north and south. And then you'll hear terms like Magog and Gog. And when we get a chance to look at that book, we'll explain what those represent. But it's the same idea. We're pulling the pictures from the Old Testament into that book. And they understood because they had not just been told, but then they lived through it. Not them personally, but their generations, right? Their families. They had a history. They knew these things. So as God tells it beforehand, then the children of Israel pass through it. That by the time you hit the 1st century, and you have John writing later 1st century, these things, when they opened that letter that we call Revelation, they understood what they were reading. We struggle because we don't have the context, but they understood it. Okay? And we're trying to build some context so we can understand it a little bit better. Hopefully that makes sense. If not, well, remember God's in control. That's our main thing. All right, let's go a little bit further, and then we'll talk about these blasphemies from the king of the north. Verse 25, he shall stir up his power and his courage against the king of the south with a great army. And the king of the south shall be stirred up to battle with a very great and mighty army, but he shall not stand, for they shall devise plans against him. Yes, those who eat of the portion of his delicacies shall destroy him. His army shall be swept away, and many shall fall down slain. So you can see this plot. There's some infiltration there. But these kings' hearts shall be bent on evil, and they shall speak lies at the same table, but it shall not prosper, for the end will still be at the appointed time. Now again, we hear this language. We're not going to the end of time. We're talking about the end of something else. What is it? Well, the end of these kings that we're talking about, not the end of the world. Okay? Even if your thing at the top says, which is going to say in chapter 12, prophecy of the end of the world, or the end of time. We'll get to that later. But verse 28. While returning to his land with great riches, his heart shall be moved against the holy covenant, so he shall do damage and return to his own land. What does that look like? What does doing damage to the holy covenant look like? All right, verse 29. We're only going to pick up a couple pieces of this, but notice he's going to tell us a name that helps us set up time. Notice we're going to move periods again a little bit to set up context. It's tricky, okay? I get it. But just let us remember Cyrus was of what nation or what kingdom? Persians. Persians came before the Greeks, right? Okay, so anyway, verse 29. At the appointed time he shall return and go towards the south, but it shall not be like the former or the latter. For ships from Cyprus shall come against him. Therefore he shall be grieved and return in rage against the holy covenant and do damage. So he shall return and show regard for those who forsake the holy covenant. Now, what has all this got to do with? Cyrus had said that the children of Israel can go back to Jerusalem. Daniel had read that. This is going back to Daniel chapter 7, but especially in Daniel chapter 9, chapter 8 as well. when Gabriel had come to him and said, I'm answering your prayer. They're going to go back to the land. They're not there yet while he's writing this. They're going to be in that land because Cyrus is going to make this decree. They're going to build their lives. But remember, he said to shut and close it because it's not going to happen yet. So they're going to be able to build their lives under the Persian Empire, not completely at peace, but mostly because of the protection of the Persians, until the Greeks arrive. And then what's going to happen to the world? It's going to be on fire. And it's going to be on fire for a couple centuries. So it is really important, again, to keep these things in mind. But what's going to happen here? Well, in this section, we're talking about this one northern king. And again, I believe it's Antiochus Epiphanes IV. He's a Seleucid from the north. He sets up camp there in Jerusalem, among other places. He puts in this big idol in the temple to Jupiter, which is Zeus. It's a Roman version of Zeus, actually. He's going to fortify the city with his own barracks and his own army. He's going to basically make it his home base for that area. And you're going to have all this warring, not just with the south, but with the people of Israel. Because the people of Israel, how are they going to react to an idol in their temple? Yeah, it's not going to be good.
He tried to destroy the Jewish religion, destroy the Testament, the Old Testament. Anyone who was reading it or had it, or he slaughtered a pig inside the temple.
Mm-hmm. This dude was a bad dude. Yeah. I mean, he was nasty. And I think part of it was because they didn't welcome him with open arms. And you know, these tyrants, they get vindictive and nasty, and that's exactly who he was. He may have been from the very get-go, okay? But remember, he had been beaten back so many times. His family, probably his would be his father and grandfather, they both died young, if I remember right, by the Ptolemies. So you have this battle back and forth, and it lands right on their doorstep. So what ends up happening? Well, as Mr. Allen just said there, Mr. Allen, listen to me, I'm back at school. As Allen said there, we have this war now on the Jewish people, on their religion, on their identity, on their covenant, on the Word of God. And you see it play out here. So it's going to turn against the covenant, the Holy Covenant, verse 30. Forces shall be mustered, verse 31. And they shall defile the sanctuary fortress. And they shall take away the daily sacrifices and place there the abomination of desolation. It's the second time that terminology has been used in this book. All right. I want you to put a marker there. Turn with me in the New Testament, Matthew 24. We did this once. I'm going to do it again. Just make sure that we...
Can you imagine how upsetting all this was? Everybody, I mean, I don't think we can even grasp it.
No. Most of the wars that even our generations would have experienced were overseas, right? They weren't in our backyard. You have to go back to the Civil War for us to experience that, or the war in 1912 or something like that. But, to live generation of this just happening on top of you all the time would be hard to imagine, I think, for us. All right. I'm going to do this really quickly, okay? Matthew chapter 24, and then we're going to jump to Luke 21, just so you know where we're going. This is where we predict the destruction of the temple, and this is where a lot of people try to go in and make it the end of time. Jesus is talking about the temple. It's clearly stated, verse 1. Then Jesus went out and departed from the temple, and his disciples came up to show him the buildings of the temple. And Jesus said to them, Do you not see all these things? Assuredly, I say to you, not one stone shall be left here upon another that shall not be thrown down. What's he talking about? You look back, you see all these things? He can only be he's talking about the temple and or the whole of Jerusalem. But he's talking about at least the temple, okay? I think he's talking probably about everything, that whole mount. And he says one stone won't be left on top of another. In verse 3, Now, as he sat on the Mount of Olives, the disciples came to him privately, saying, Tell us, when will these things be? What things? When the temple will be destroyed. And what will be the sign of your coming and of the end of the age? Now, remember, they're trying to figure this out. Just because they ask a question doesn't mean they have it right. Does that make sense? When will because they're thinking if the temple's gone, the world's gone. They have no understanding of the new covenant. Do y'all follow me? That's why they were so angry about Jesus talking about the temple being destroyed. That was their frame of mind. All right, so verse 4. And Jesus answered and said to them, take heed that no one deceives you. Many will come in my name. Verse 6, and you will hear of wars and rumors of wars. Right? 7, nation will rise against nation. There'll be famines and earthquakes. 8, all these are beginnings of sorrows. Then they will deliver you up to tribulation. Verse 9, and kill you, and you will be hated by all nations for my name's sake. Verse 10, and then many will be offended, will betray one another and hate one another. There will be many false prophets. Verse 11, verse 12, and because lawlessness will abound, the love of many will grow cold. But he who endures to the end shall be saved. Okay. And his gospel of the kingdom will be preached in all the world as a witness to all the nations, and then the end will come. And then what's he said? Verse 15. Therefore, when you see the abomination of desolation spoken of by Daniel the prophet standing in the holy place. What's the sign? The abomination of desolation standing in the holy place. All right. Luke chapter 21. I promise you it's worth it. Luke recording the same thing. Jesus predicts the end of the temple, verses 5 and 6. These things, verse 6, which you see, the days will come in which not one stone shall be left upon another that shall not be thrown down. Then they're going to ask, when are these things going to happen? Then he's going to say that, virtually the same recording, it's the same conversation, wars and all these things. And then he says this, verse 20. But when you see Jerusalem surrounded by armies, then you know its desolation is near. What's the abomination of desolation? When Gentile armies are surrounding the holy temple. And that's what we see. Now, what was he talking about? Is he talking about here? Is what he's talking about 24? Yes. There's a thing in prophecy where you can have a dual prophecy. In other words, it happens with Masonic or Messianic prophecies. In other words, there's an initial fulfillment, but there's a bigger, more important fulfillment. And I'll give you an example. When God gives David a promise of a son who will sit on his throne, initially he's talking about Solomon, but ultimately he's talking about who? Jesus. And if you go back and read in 2 Samuel 7, you'll see that there is conversation that's clearly to the present or the immediate, but also to that further fulfillment. It's what we call a double fulfillment or a double prophecy. It's not that it's double in the sake that we're applying the two things. It's because the initial thing represents the future thing. So go back with me, and I hope I didn't lose you on that, because I'm going to do the best I can so you can catch this. What's going to happen in this day, in this time that we're reading about in Daniel, is going to be repeated in Matthew 24. Y'all follow me there? So we get the picture of what this looks like, and when Jesus invokes Daniel and says that, they know because what has happened? It's happened before. And that's exactly what happens. Titus, under Vespasian, marches the Roman army and surrounds Jerusalem and sieges that city. I can't remember how long. Maybe Alan remembers. Basically trying to starve them out. But guess what? Long before those days, they had made, and there's a really cool story how David retakes the city, going up to the wells and everything underneath. But there's this elaborate passageway. There's water underneath the city. So they can't wait them out anymore because they keep surviving. So eventually, what do? Eventually, they go in and they slaughter. And it's a slaughter. And this wording right here would apply to the same things that are going to happen in 70 AD. But they happen in the time of Antiochus Epiphanes to the Jews in that day. Okay? So you have like a double picture. So we have an example that we can go back and pull from. Hopefully that makes sense. If it doesn't, just remember that the abomination of desolation spoken of by Daniel is armies inside the city. Okay? We can't figure out whose armies they are. At least we get that much, we'll be good. Okay? Okay, we've hit time. Thoughts, comments? Did I lose you completely on that?
If you read about the Syrian, and it sounds just like when it was discovered there. I mean, they were back and forth, like you said. They would win and lose and win and take it and then lose it. And so.
Yep. There's a lot of history. There's a saying kind of in Europe and in Israel and the Middle East and other places in the world. We talk about history because our country is so young. We think 100 years, 200 years is old. And they're over there, they're talking about things that are thousands of years old. This history has been going on for a long time. And there's lessons to be learned in it. And they are to learn the lesson, but when you get on the other side, Jesus is pulling the lesson they learned to try to teach his people in that day. Does that make sense? What's his ultimate goal in Matthew 24? For the Christians, when they see that army approaching, to what? To get out. Right? We talked about this when we were looking at it in Mark. The point wasn't the end of the world, because where would you go? Why would you run to the mountains? It would still be the end of the world. It wouldn't matter. But it does matter if you have an army sieging the city, doesn't it? And that's exactly what he's trying to warn them about. All right, we didn't get as far as I wanted to. That's okay. We'll try to finish this up, at least in the main, next week. Keep in mind that these books are written for the comfort of our learning, as what Romans 15:4 said, but not everything is a direct piece like, well, that's about this act of worship or that act of faith or that act of moral living. But it does help us to understand the God we serve. God has been in control the whole time. Does he remain in control? And we have elections all the time. We just had some off-year elections, as they call it, and if you're much of a political person, I wasn't too happy about some of the results. I'll just be honest. I'm like, what does that mean? What's the future going to look like? But you know what? I don't know what it's going to look like. But just like in Daniel's day, I do know who's ultimately in charge somewhere. All right, I appreciate you all being a good sport, at least through this. Hopefully you're picking up a few things. If nothing more than a few things, well, that's okay. But, we're almost done. Well, I promise you we'll do an easier book next, just to kind of keep it balanced, okay? We have an invitation song picked out. Remind me again the number.
223.
Number 223. We do want to extend an opportunity that if you're here with us tonight and have a need, whether it's to obey the gospel, or request prayers, or simply just to be encouraged in some way that we can be of help with, we of course want to extend that invitation to you as we stand together and sing the song.
Would you be free from